Hello and welcome to my video. Today I will be taking a deep dive and an economic analysis on the recorded music industry and the effects of streaming services in the United States market. First, I want to show this video that I made so that we can understand and discuss the transition from physical CDs, like physical sales like CDs and vinyls to digital formats like MP3s and streaming. Okay, so here we have the US recorded music revenues by format. It's all the way. Okay, so here we have the US recorded music revenues by format. It's all the way from 1973 to 2023. Let's move to the early 2000s with the rise of technology. So here we can see in the early 2000s that the CD format accounted for 92.3% of total revenue that year. And we can see as the years go on, it gets smaller and smaller. But in 2005, we see the rise of paid subscriptions. In 2005, it only accounted for 1.2% of the total revenue. Now, in 2023, it accounted for 59.3% of the total revenue. We see the start of on-demand streaming, which is free but ad-supported in 2011. That is only a 1.6% total share, whereas in 2023, it accounted for a 10.9% of total revenue. Okay, so now let's talk artists, record labels, and streaming platforms. So on average, an artist makes less than a cent per stream, only 0.003, sorry, it's between 0.003 and 0.005. It depends on factors like the platform, location of the listener, and the subscription tier of the listener. So let's take a look at this graph, this infographic on the left. So it shows the way that money is dispersed through different distribution channels. And so we can see that for every $100, artists only make $9.23, but the record companies somehow take most of it with $58.60. Major labels have been known to take upwards of 90% of net sales from artists, whereas mid-sized independent royalty rates average between 50 and 75. So let's talk about those record labels. The big three record labels that dominate the market are Universal Music Group, Sony Music Entertainment, and Warner Music Group. Universal Music Group continues to hold the largest share of the market at 38.23%. These companies account for 70 to 75% of the market share collectively, with the remaining split among independent artists. So let's talk about some artist-label tension. Labels hold significant power, often leaving artists with limited negotiating ability over revenue splits and creative control. And the main artist platform challenge is that artists argue that streaming platforms undervalue their work, while platforms claim that they are constrained by licensing fees demanded by record labels. For the marketing structure of the industry, we can see that limited competition leads to price-setting power and revenue concentration. So on the demand side, we see that consumer preferences have shifted towards convenience and affordability, with streaming services coming as intermediaries, facing their own competition, but they increase accessibility and lowering consumer search costs. On the reverse side, we have the supply side. The record labels and artists supply music to the streaming platforms, but with this, there is room for artists to grow without the record labels. The increased accessibility and reduced barriers to entry with direct-to-fan platforms that bypass traditional labels have allowed for the rise of smaller artists. So we can see that there's an oligopoly in both record labels and music streaming, but let's take a look at this graph right here. So this graph shows the online music services used most frequently in the United States as of January 2024. It's from Statistica. And As I said before, streaming platforms like Spotify act as intermediaries but face competition in their own market. From here, we can see the largest player in the streaming oligopoly is Spotify. Spotify has the largest share at 35%, with YouTube Music in second with 19%. These platforms face constant pressure from record labels to increase payouts, which strains profitability and leads to pricing dilemmas, i.e., whether to raise subscription fees or not. Demand for streaming services, I feel, is relatively inelastic because music is a necessity for so many consumers. And I have found that it is inelastic in the premium subscriptions. So, streaming services often use price discrimination strategies such as offering family plans, student discounts, and ad supported tiers to target different segments of the market. The most popular model is premium subscriptions with freer with a free listening ad 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 tier. This generates income by playing ads between songs or displaying banner ads within the apps. This allows them to cater to a broad audience, balancing accessibility with monetization. To retain users and maximize consumer utilities, streaming platforms focus on enhancing the user experience. Platforms like Spotify incorporate social features, enabling users to share playlists, follow friends, or even create collaborative playlists. These social aspects enhance user engagement and increase the service's utility by connecting consumers with the shared musical experience. So we've also seen a lot of cross service integration where platforms are offering integration with other services like Spotify and Hulu, which enhances the overall utility by giving consumers access to multiple services for one price, making them more likely to stay subscribed. Okay, here we have the elasticity of demand and price discrimination. The demand for streaming services depend on income levels, price sensitivity, and market competition. Premium subscriptions like Spotify Premium and Apple Music exhibit inelastic demand among higher income consumers as their services are seen as essential or desirable for their convenience and personalization. In contrast, free tier users are more price sensitive and may switch between free and paid tiers based on price changes or perceived value. Cross elasticity of demand further intensifies competition as consumers can easily switch between platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Music, particularly within the similar ad supported tiers, while alternative forms of entertainment such as video streaming, gaming, and social media create substitutes that risk music streaming demand when prices rise. Network effects also impact elasticity as established platforms like Spotify benefit from large user bases, which attract artists and create a positive feedback loop, making consumers hesitant to switch due to curated playlists, social features, and personalization. Bundled subscriptions like combining Hulu or Disney Plus with music streaming reduces also reduces elasticity by offering added value or unique content, encouraging consumers to stay despite price increases. Price discrimination strategies that boost engagement and revenue face challenges such as increased licensing costs, competition, artist payouts with algorithms influencing exposure based on pricing tiers. While premium subscriptions benefit from targeted recommendation, free tier users often see only mainstream content that generates ad revenue. Long-term profitability is also at a risk due to market saturation in major regions, which may put pressure on platforms to innovate service offerings or different pricing strategies. Independent independent artists, in the meanwhile, face challenges competing with established acts despite promotional tools like playlist placements, targeted advertising, and they often instead are relying on those strategic content releases and collaborations to gain that visibility in such a crowded market. So next we have the economics of scale. It is the economics of scale provide major record labels like Universal, Sony, and Warner Music with significant cost advantages as they produce, distribute, and promote music on a massive scale. By spreading fixed costs over larger output and leveraging vast distribution networks across physical retail, digital stores, and streaming platforms, these labels achieve lower costs and maintain price setting power. They also benefit from bulk discounts and operational efficiencies that smaller labels and independent artists cannot match. While the US recorded music industry functions as an oligopoly dominated by a few major players, it also exhibits monopolistic competition with product differentiation, creating opportunities for smaller players. Independent artists utilize platforms like SoundCloud and TikTok to bypass traditional distribution channels, as I've talked about, reaching audiences through creative marketing, fan engagement, and niche genres. These artists differentiate themselves with authentic or experimental music, personal storytelling, and exclusive releases, often connecting fans directly through social media. This uh, this access allows independent artists to compete with major labels despite their limited resources. Simultaneously, competition among streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon drives innovation in user experience and technologies such as machine learning for personalized playlists, high quality, high quality audio, and integration across ecosystems. This constant innovation forces artists, both independent and mainstream, to adapt and explore new content strategies, ensuring the music industry remains dynamic and competitive. So let's talk about a few microeconomic principles that I wanted to include but couldn't talk about yet. So we have externalities. The rise of streaming has positive externalities such as increased access to music, but also negative ones like reduced revenue for artists, underproduction, leading to underproduction of music by smaller artists. So we have some network effects. Platforms like Spotify and Apple Music benefit from it. More users attract more artists, and more artists in turn attracts even more subscribers. And then we have opportunity costs, where artists and labels face trade-offs in deciding whether to release music through streaming, physical formats, or live performance promotions. Each choice impacts the revenue potential. And then I wanted to include game theory because the competitive strategies between major platforms like Spotify, Apple Music reflect game theory dynamics, as each company must anticipate rivals' pricing, features, and content offerings to maintain a large market share. Most share a freemium model with an ad supported tier, as I've talked about. Marginal cost and pricing. The marginal cost of streaming is close to zero, yet platforms use pricing strategies like subscription to maximize customer surplus while still maintaining profitability. All right, so let's do a quick review on the key issues of events. The key issues and events. So we have revenue distribution. A critical issue in the US recorded music market is that the complex distribution of revenue between artist record labels and streaming platforms. Okay, is the complex distribution of revenue between artists, record labels, and streaming platforms. Artists often receive a smaller share of the revenue generated through streaming, as major platforms and record labels claim a large portion of the earnings. This has raised concern about fair compensation for artists in this digital age of streaming. So, for market concentration, the oligopolistic structure of the music industry is evident, with a few major labels, Universal, Sony, and Warner, controlling most of the market. This concentration limits competition, creating barriers for smaller labels and independent artists who struggle to capture significant market share. This has led to increased revenue concentration among a handful of players, which has further complicated the revenue sharing system. The impact of technology. Technological advancements, particularly streaming platforms, have significantly transformed consumer behavior. These platforms provide easy access to music at a lower cost, driving demand for on-demand listening. However, they have also altered supply and demand dynamics by changing how music is consumed, distributed, and monetized. As streaming platforms grow, the impact of technology has intensified price competition and altered the traditional business model in the industry. The oligopolistic nature of the market restricts competition and creates complicated revenue sharing structures, as this has posed challenges for artists, as I've spoke about, who often face lower payouts due to the high percentage taken by streaming services and record labels. This raises concerns about fairness and sustainability, especially as more independent artists and platforms attempt to carve out spaces in the market. So, in conclusion, the US recorded music market is shaped by key economic principles, microeconomic principles, including supply and demand, market structure, and price elasticity. Streaming services has reshaped the industry as a whole, making music more accessible, but the shift has introduced challenges regarding fair revenue distribution. While the market provides consumers with affordable music, the concentrations of power in the hands of major labels and streaming platforms raises concern. The issue of revenue distribution is critical to ensuring a continued artist participation and innovation. Policymakers have called for a more balanced model, arguing that improving how revenue is shared could incentivize greater creativity and a more sustainable future for music. As streaming services dominate, the debate over artist compensation and the search for newer, fairer platforms are ongoing. So these are my resources, and then this is my graph that had unlisted source. All right, so thank you for watching. We did not discuss all of the topics I wanted to cover, but the video has gotten way too long. So I want to thank you for coming, and I hope you have a wonderful day.